YouTube, how's it going? The GOAT House is back, grading every single NFL team based on their free agency so far here. Still some key, significant impact players available in free agency. Jadeveon Clowney, a couple quarterbacks. You got Winston, Cam Newton. So that obviously, those players signing can change these grades, and we can revisit. But we're in draft season now. We got a bunch of draft content already out. More to come. A couple more free agency videos to get to. A post-free agency playoff predictions that we do every year. So we still got a lot to get to, plenty on the channel. NFL Draft, April 23rd. We will be live right here like we were last year on YouTube. Instant analysis on the picks. Join us. Join myself and the other guys. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're trying to reach 50K by then. We have two channels. There's a link in the description for the other channel. Please subscribe to both. Follow our Twitter. Always talking football, breaking news. A fan-voted mock draft is going on right now. You guys vote. We'll make a video on that once the voting is through on the first round. Anything you need will be in the description and the comments. You'll find links down there, as well as our new podcast, 6 episodes out, Apple and Spotify. But the free agency grades so far for every single team, I'm going to break it down here, starting with the Cardinals. So who the Cardinals added to their team, Devondre Campbell, linebacker from the Falcons. I thought that was a pretty good addition. They're adding him in there with Jordan Hicks, who they got last offseason. I think it's a pretty good duo for their 3-4. Kenyon Drake will be back. We see that the big one is they trade for DeAndre Hopkins, which I'm factoring in the free agency here. Just additions, in the offseason is what I'm grading here. Devon Kennard, I think, is a sneaky good signing, and Jordan Phillips will help them, on the defensive line, of course, as well. And I did like what the Cardinals did here. They definitely got better. There's still some holes. There's still some holes going into the draft, and that's okay. You always leave something there. But I really like what they did. The DeAndre Hopkins move is an A+ move. Nothing else here. I give really an A+, but overall I'm going to give the Cardinals an A for their free agency so far. I guess any of these teams could still make, or most of them. Some are in cap space situations, but can still make a move. But so far, I'm giving the Cardinals an A for those moves so far in free agency. And then we're moving on to the Atlanta Falcons. And the Falcons were a team that, I didn't expect to do a whole bunch, because they had a cap space situation. There was going to be some guys that they were going to cut like we expected that weren't really going to save a whole bunch of cap right now. So I didn't really expect them to do a whole bunch. And they kind of, they didn't really do a whole bunch, but they did more than I thought. Adding Dante Fowler, who I think is getting better, still young, was very solid last year. I think somewhat underrated. So they add Dante Fowler to the edge like they needed to do. If I do like that signing, if there's a downside to it, yeah, he's only succeeded in the 3-4, kind of struggled a bit in the 4-3 with the Jags, succeeded in the 3-4 with the Rams. So do the Falcons want to make the switch to 3-4? But overall, I do like the signing, even though you could say it's risky. Gurley's not the same as he was a couple years ago, but he's still a good back. And it's still low risk, high reward there. 1 year, $6 million for Todd Gurley. So looking at this, kind of given what their cap space situation is, this is great. I didn't like the Hayden Hurst trade. I think he'll be good on the Falcons, better than he was on the Ravens. I think they gave up a little much. Didn't absolutely hate it. So I gave the Falcons a B+ here. That's what I gave them. Not a whole bunch of wow moves, but for where they were in cap space, with their cap space, they did more. They definitely did more than expected. Adding Dante Fowler and adding Todd Gurley. So overall, for their situation, I give it a B+. It was a pretty good free agency so far, and I would imagine for the most part, they're done. There could be some very small signings still left. But moving on to the third team, we're going to grade again, getting through all 32 teams. The Ravens, who did they add? They add big names like Calais Campbell. They add Derek Wolfe. Actually, we're going to get Michael Brockers, end up with Derek Wolfe cheaper. I think Wolfe's better than Brockers right now. Yeah, they were thinking longer term. That's why they wanted Brockers, because they do have, the other guys are more veterans on the D-line, adding Calais Campbell. But Derek Wolfe makes them better right now. Franchise tag Matt Judon, and then signing Jimmy Smith to a 1 year, $6 million deal there. I think that was a pretty solid move, too. That's a guy they bring back. I like what the Ravens did here. They got better. Specifically what I like, because we know they had needs at the edge rush position and possibly inside linebacker, which they could look to the draft. And they've been getting some good pressure without being, great on the edge. They've been getting good pressures because they're a very good blitzing team. But somewhere where they could have added pressure besides the edge was their actual defensive line in their 3-4. They've kind of been missing. They've been very good stopping the run there, but they've been missing quarterback pressure on that defensive line for quite some time. And adding Calais Campbell and Derek Wolfe, those guys, that's kind of the main part of their game there, is getting pressure from the trenches there. So to me, they really improved that defense, and they really did. And a lot of these trades and what they've done have been smart too. They haven't, I think they kind of stole Calais Campbell here. What they've done, and how they've transformed some of those picks they got and what they've turned them into, I guess is what I'm getting to, has been just absolutely fantastic. So I like what the Ravens have done here. Not a whole bunch of moves, but ones that made them better and ones that were good moves in terms of the deal, the contract. So I gave the Ravens an A for the free agency so far here in 2020. Next up, we got the Buffalo Bills, a team that definitely got better. That's kind of one of the things I look at. Did they get better? How did they fare with their cap space situation? Did they miss out on getting somebody? Did they overpay somebody? I look at all those things, and the Bills checked the box of getting better. They definitely got better. Adding Stephon Diggs, who I think realistically can be a top 5 receiver in this Bills offense. I think will be actually this year and going forward. Quentin Jefferson. It's not a huge impact signing, but I'm a big fan of his. He can play multiple spots in the D-line. It's a cheap deal. That's a win right there. Getting Quentin Spain back for somewhat of a cheap deal, that's a win. But then you got deals that, I kind of like adding Josh Norman. How much is that, how much of an impact is that going to make? He's very much declining. Darrell Williams, I think it's a good signing, but was it 100% necessary? He has the injury concern. Vernon Butler, so maybe he got paid a little more than I thought, but still could make them better. The Mario Addison one, I talked about that. It's a little confusing. I don't have a problem with Mario Addison, really. I think he's a solid pass rusher. It's kind of what they had already, though. They kind of had these pass rushers, and then signing him to a 3-year deal worth a bit of money there, over $30 million for a guy that's 32 years old, was a little confusing. And if you kind of backtrack a little bit, right when the season ended, I talked about teams that could be contenders, and the Bills were that wild card team. And I was looking ahead to free agency. I was kind of predicting their free agency when doing that, and them with a lot of cap space, them getting better. But one thing I kind of made clear that I want them to do to get there was to get one of these top-tier pass rushers, and that's what they didn't do right now, because they are a top-tier pass rusher away from being elite defense, a very great defense, and it shows how good the rest of the defense is. That's kind of where their weakness was. It wasn't really a big weakness, but lacking more just getting to the quarterback in general. That shows how good the rest of the defense is. But they still didn't do that with the cap space they had. There's still some good guys out there or guys available via trade, so they can make that happen. So overall, they got better. Gaining Diggs was big time for them. I'm going to give them an A-. And the reason for that minus is because, I wish they would have got that big-time pass rusher, but you can't knock them too much for that because they did get better. It's just... I really thought they were going to land one of those big-time guys, and some of those guys didn't even get paid that much more money than a guy like they gave Mario Addison. So that was a little confusing to me. No first-round pick now. They did add Diggs. The second round, they can add a pretty good pass rusher. The pass rush draft, recently watched a bunch of film. It's really growing on me. A lot better than I thought it was at one point. So they can get a guy there, but that's still a spot where they definitely can get better, for sure, on the edge. A- for the Bills. Overall got better. Definitely at least a playoff contender. The Panthers would be next, and the Panthers, I'm kind of back and forth on where they're at here. I love the Teddy Bridgewater signing. I love the fit. I still think Teddy Bridgewater's potential. I think he's gonna be very good there. I think it's a pretty good deal too. $63 million is a lot of money, but the average and what quarterbacks are getting, I think it's a pretty good deal. I would have pegged Bridgewater getting more than Phillip Rivers, so that kind of shows that that's a pretty good deal there. And then, there's some small signings I like that just really don't have a huge impact on the grade or the team. P.J. Walker, Stephen Weatherly, I kind of like those ones. Not a huge impact. Robbie Anderson, I like it because I thought he was asking for around $14-15 million. They get him $10 million per year, so it's cheaper than I thought, and I think he's a pretty good deep threat. But at the same time, are the Panthers trying to win now? Are they in rebuild mode? A little bit of both. You can't really tell. You would almost rather them save that money and go to the draft. In a way, you can make that case, even though Anderson they got a little cheaper than I thought. So it's kind of back and forth on that one. And then the Russell Okung trade, trading Trey Turner, that was a confusing one to me. So that kind of brings it down a bit. So kind of back and forth, as you can tell for me on the Panthers. And that kind of lands them right there at a B. So I think, why it's not a bad grade is because the signings like Teddy Bridgewater kind of bringing them up. Overall, I like the Anderson one, but you kind of can play both sides on that one. And then some smaller signings I like, kind of keeps them in the middle there at B. There's some confusing ones, but nothing that was terrible really to me. So B, I consider still a good grade. So that's where I'm gonna peg them right there at a B. The Bears are next. And the Bears, I want to throw an R letter grade up here for risky. And I think a lot of teams or a lot of people out there are really ripping the Bears because they see the amount of risk taken here in some of these signings. And what I mean by that, well, you could start with Jimmy Graham, which I absolutely hate that one. I hate the Jimmy Graham one. 2 years, $16 million. Jimmy Graham is risky signing for that much money, for the amount of money you spent already on tight ends and where he's at in his career. Nick Foles, extremely risky. Bringing another quarterback, you invested so much in the draft on one. You bring in another one that has only succeeded really with the Eagles. He also has some injury concerns, so you call that's big time risk. Robert Quinn, a guy that's almost known as a bust for quite some time. Then he lands with the Cowboys. The first time he's going to play in a 4-3, and he succeeds. The Bears run a 3-4. Will he fit the 3-4 where he's kind of, hasn't played his best? So all of that, when there's more moves they may be able to talk about, but those say risky. Risky is hell, and people are scared. People are kind of knocking the Bears for that. But to me, I like risk. You're not going to make it anywhere unless you risk some things. I gave the Bears an A- here. I definitely think they got a lot better. I think they got a lot better with Nick Foles and Robert Quinn kind of going back to that. Yeah, it's a little risky, him not being in at 4-3 here, but he's really, playing opposite of Khalil Mack with Akeem Hicks, Eddie Goldman in front. He's never really had that. Yeah, he played with a guy, Aaron Donald. It's a little different. There's no reason why Robert Quinn should not succeed. And like I said, Foles makes them a lot better. I love the fit there, him and the Nagy offense. They're going to be able to run more RPO, which they wanted to do but couldn't last year. And then, Jimmy Graham, I still hate. I guess that's where the minus comes in. Everything I like about the Bears. Artie Burns is going to be good depth cornerback. Ifedi has a chance to start at right guard. If not, it's good depth, not too expensive. The Danny Trevathan one was pretty underrated one. I thought they got him. I think he took a hometown discount. I think they got him cheaper than I thought he would. Oh, I know that. Not a whole bunch, but it's a pretty underrated one. So the Bears got better. They realistically right now, after finishing third in the NFC North, they could be. You could make the case of the favorites for the NFC North. I know a lot of people are ripping them for these moves. I like it. They got a lot better, and that's why it's at that A- range there for the Chicago Bears. Moving on to the Cincinnati Bengals, a team that's, I'm kind of back and forth on this team too, because you look at some of these signings. I mean, they got better. That check that box. They got better. Adding a slot corner, Mackenzie Alexander, adding an outside corner in Trey Waynes, adding a D tackle to play more of the nose role next to Geno Atkins and DJ Reader. That's fantastic. And then Von Bell, I think, is a good, nothing outstanding, but he's a good young safety that's going to be a good pairing with their kind of key piece in the secondary, which is Jesse Bates from a couple years ago. So, and then you get AJ Greenback. So they definitely got better. There's nothing major here. Nothing major. They got better. But it's weird because you look at Mackenzie Alexander, to me, 1 year, $4 million deal is cheaper than I thought. Von Bell, 3 year, $18 million. That's cheaper than I thought. But then, DJ Reader is kind of only proven for 1 year. And I don't hate the signing at all. Not even close to hate. It makes them better. But 4 year, $53 million is definitely more than I expected. And the guy that, how much of an impact will he have? Still a question. They paid Trey Waynes a little bit, more than I expected, but I still think he's been getting better. And then AJ Green, I think would have been much better if you signed him to a deal rather than the franchise tag overpaid him. So they did overpay a little bit in some spots, and you can make the case with the Bengals being pretty bad team last year, they may have to overpay. I can understand that argument. They're about to get Joe Burrow. They're about to be set pretty well. But then they got, for some reason, cheaper on some guys like Alexander and Bell, so that kind of discredits that argument. So overpaid a little bit, but they definitely got better. I'm so far 2020 free agency, I'm giving the Bengals a B plus. That's where I feel that they're at. Let's see what they had in the draft. If they nail that draft, they can be a lot better than people think. So B plus for the Bengals. And then we're moving on to the Cleveland Browns. Looking at the Cleveland Browns, another one. You look at what they got. They got another one of those teams. They got better. But there's a lot of signings here, but there's a lot of signings that are kind of like average to below average. The big ones are, well, first off, this plays a small part because it's a tender. But I did really, really like putting the second round tender on Kareem Hunt. Because you get him back cheaper, or you get a second round pick, which they could use. That was great. It plays a small role, though. That's not like a major free agency offseason move here. But looking at two deals I want to point out, and it happens to be their two biggest ones. Jack Conklin, which 3-year, $42 million, it's overpaid. That's overpaid for Jack Conklin for sure. It's a guy that he struggled a bit. He's only proven he played okay in one season, and he's only proven he's a pretty darn solid run blocking tackle. He struggles pass protection. He's definitely worthy of a starting tackle. So all of that sounds kind of bad, but at the same time, they definitely needed somebody. They didn't need to go into the draft, needing two tackles. They filled the right tackle, and he's also a great fit. What does Stefanski? What does Stefanski's offense want to do, especially with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt? They want to run the ball, throw the ball to the back, out of the backfield, run the ball some more, opens things up for the quarterback, Baker Mayfield. Jack Conklin fits that. So it's overpaid. I've never really been a huge fan of Conklin, but he fits. This is the best landing spot for Jack Conklin for the Browns. So that's kind of back and forth there. Same thing applies at Austin Hooper. I think a little bit overpaid. It's a guy that's only proven something in a system, a Falcon system, where they kind of just throw the ball. They scheme ways for him to get the ball in the red zone, which is fantastic for him. A guy that's a pretty solid blocker, just nothing wow. I think he stepped up last year before getting hurt, does have the injury concern. I think he's a little bit overpaid, but going back to Stefanski's offense, how many tight ends that Stefanski used in Minnesota. Kyle Rudolph had when you start to think Kyle Rudolph could be kind of going downhill with Stefanski's offense, he goes up. He had a big-time year. And if I had to compare somebody to Kyle Rudolph, another Kyle Rudolph player, Austin Hooper would be that guy, and he happened to be a free agent. So they got that tremendous fit just for a little bit of an overpay. So back and forth on both of these. And then they got some small signings that I don't mind, adding Carl Joseph, adding Andrew Sendejo, adding Kevin Johnson. Case Keenum's a perfect kind of that mentor for Baker. Absolutely perfect, I think, for Baker Mayfield. Andrew Billings, adding him to stop the run, maybe on first down, second down. For cheap. I like those. There's just nothing major. So I'm kind of in the middle here, kind of back and forth, and what that tells me is a B for the Browns. They definitely did get better, but kind of leading the way in total cap space available for not the second free agency started, but for most of this period. You expected maybe a little more, but you can't really punish a team too much for saving money at the same time. So I gave them a B. They did get better though. So far, most grades are pretty good. We're moving on to the Cowboys. However, the Cowboys have a long list of free agents they added. But I'll just say right off the bat, I do not like what the Cowboys have done here. Ton of money in free agency, and that put them in two possible situations. You do have a long list of free agents, but you do have the money. You can stay the same, get your big-time players back, stay about the same, hope banking on them improving, especially with the new coaching staff. Option A. Option B was to, definitely have to re-sign, Dak Prescott, guys like that. Maybe we can't get all these guys back, but we will still have some money left over, and we're going to go get some additions here to make the team better. And they didn't do either of those things. They did not do either of those things. They got Dak Prescott back. You wish they would got him on a long-term extension, which definitely could be possible. But they got Dak back. They got Amari Cooper back, but they're almost forced. $100 million is a little much for a guy that, Amari Cooper's great. He's heading in the right direction. Comes off the field now and then. You have a great receiver draft class. I'm not suggesting they should have let Cooper walk, but it stings a little bit to have to dish over $100 million to that at this moment. You pretty much had to because you traded a first-round pick for him. I'm not calling that one a bad deal whatsoever because you pretty much had to. I'm not in love with it. But then after that, you're overpaying Blake Jarwin a bit. Anthony Brown, it felt like they were just done with. They didn't want to use him anymore. He's a slot corner. They got a million guys that play in the slot. They signed him, $15.5 million, 3 years. Clinton Dix is jumping around teams like crazy. He can't make it. He significantly made the Bears safety group worse last year. Eddie Jackson had to, the responsibility he had back there was absolutely ridiculous. Maybe they get better with Clinton Dix though, because they haven't had their luck at safety. But that's nothing to get excited about, which some people are for some reason. And then just re-signing some guys. Gerald McCoy. Gerald McCoy, always liked him. He's getting up there in age. He's not really the same. He can still make an impact. You signed him to a 3-year deal. I don't know. Dontari Poe is probably one that I like. But like I said, with that amount of money, I take the cap space into consideration. You either get your guys back, which they let quite a few walk. It felt like they got the wrong guys back, or you get better and add additions, have additions to this offseason. Bottom line is, did the Cowboys get better? Oh, they did not get better. Did they stay the same? They didn't stay the same to me. I think they got worse because they lost some key players. They didn't add key players, and that's the key word there. So confused on what the Cowboys did here. I can't. It's hard for me to flunk a team. I gave them a D. It's hard for me to flunk a team because they did get. You had to get Dak Prescott back. That was the number one free agent. You pretty much had to get Cooper back. Dontari Poe. Not to mention they paid two kickers. That's really not. Yeah, I think adding Zerline makes them better. Even though Forbath didn't miss a kick, I think people overreact from that a little bit. Forbath will cost you some extra points, I think, if you hang on to him. So, yeah, Zerline's probably better. Interesting situation signing 2 kickers, though. That wasn't planned, obviously. It's just confusing. I can't say the Cowboys got better. They definitely did not get better. They may have gotten worse from last year. They're gonna be banking on Dak taking another step up, which is possible, but expected plenty more or different, better options from the Cowboys. I gave them a D. Maybe that's even generous. Moving on to the next team, which was the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos, a team that got better for sure. Adding A.J. Boye in the trade, didn't cost them a whole bunch trading a 4th-round pick. They trade for Jarrell Casey, who is a Pro Bowl level defensive lineman, for a 7th-round pick, so that was big time for them. Graham Glasgow is a pretty good addition. He's going to start at center or guard for them. He has experience at center, actually, so we'll see. They lost Connor McGovern, so we'll see what they do there, but can play either, can start at either. Adding Melvin Gordon there, I think having a good 1-2 punch at running back is pretty key, and they do have that with Lindsey and Gordon. Gordon had a pretty off year last year. I don't expect that again, though. I think it's a pretty good duo here. So I do like that one. Shelby Harris, they recently signed. I was surprised he was sitting around for so long. And I am completely shocked that it was 1 year, $3.25 million. I know he's only had one solid year. I was comparing him and DJ Reader. These are kind of the two of the same guys, just kind of one big year, around the same talent level. I liked Shelby Harris a little better, and you see the difference in prices for the two of them. I'm confused about that one. It's an absolute steal. So for the Broncos, I was kind of right there in the B plus A minus, probably the A minus range, and then the Shelby Harris one is maybe, even though it's a re-sign, it's one of the bigger steals and best steals of free agency, in my opinion. That bumps them up to an A. They definitely got better here. It's a sneaky team, but maybe the best division in football. We'll see how the season ends up there, and they're in a pretty good spot in the draft as well. So we'll see what happens. So they get an A. We're moving on to the Detroit Lions here, and they had a long list of players. But nothing super major, really. Jamie Collins, I'd say it's a pretty big impact. He kind of fits that role, that Patricia utility linebacker that can rush the passer. So that's good. It's a fit. There's some risk with that one, too, because he's only been good on the Patriots, but he is kind of playing that same role we expect. With $30 million, it's a little bit of a risk, but he had a pretty good year last year. Other than that, I like the Danny Shelton one, too, but it's nothing super major, but he'll fit that nose tackle role. And then adding Desmond Trufant. But, what I mostly stands out, I like the smaller deals, kind of like the Shelton's somewhat smaller, but, even smaller, Jerron Kearse, Nick Williams. I like those deals, but how much of the impact Are they actually going to make there with those? So I'm kind of in the middle here. Nothing fantastic. Trading Slay away kind of knocks it down a little bit. Big V, a little pricey, but there's another one that's a risk, but I kind of like the risk. Could play right tackle for them. Back and forth. But there are some good fits. Maybe that bumps it up a little bit. The Darius Slay trade kind of knocks it down a little bit. So I pegged them at a B. That's kind of where I felt they are at for this offseason here. Moving on to the next team is the Green Bay Packers. So we talked about the Lions from the NFC North. Now the Packers. Packers are, definitely one team I'm definitely disappointed in this offseason. You look when free agency opens, and you look at Brian Bulaga, a key piece to this offense, a key piece for the offensive line, the ability Aaron Rodgers is, probably the best quarterback, maybe of all time, rolling out and not only just throwing on the run, but kind of buying time out there and able to make a throw out there on the most time the right side of the field. And where the credit goes to Aaron Rodgers as it should, but where some credit hasn't gone is Brian Bulaga. I think it's a key piece to being able to do that there. So it would be a tough loss losing Bulaga. Let's keep that in mind. It would be a tough loss losing him, but going into free agency, I knew was a possibility, and it's really not the end of the world because they can do things elsewhere. So right off the bat, they signed Rick Wagner, and he's really been struggling for the Lions. The Packers have a little better coaching on the offensive line, so I think he'll be better for the Packers. Is he going to be Brian Bulaga? The good chances are not. He will not be. But that tells me they're not going with Bulaga, and I'm like, that's a tough loss, but it's okay because they don't want to spend the money there. They want to spend money in other spots. I heard they're in on Corey Littleton. They may be looking for a big-time tight end. They may be looking for a bigger-time receiver. They signed Kirksey. It's a low-level signing for a linebacker position. He has the injury concerns. I'm still thinking, they're still going to go big. They're going to get Littleton. They're going to get a tight end or a receiver. And then Bulaga gets signed for $10 million per year. That's cheaper than I thought. The Packers definitely would have paid him $10 million a year. He definitely would have came back for $10 million a year, but it's okay. The Packers are saving that money to get better on defense. You see what they did the year before with adding the Smith. They finally spent that money in free agency. That defense took that huge step up with the Smith boys, the pass rush, and I'm thinking in my head, that defense still struggled at times, stopping the run, some chunk plays, but I'm thinking, they know how to spend the money now. They know how to get better. They're going to make that defense into a top 5 maybe next year, and thinking this year, and I'm just still waiting for them to do all that. Bulaga, I don't think they really wanted to let Bulaga go, especially for $10 million. That was doable, but that money was being saved for the Corey Littleton, maybe one of those other guys there, maybe go a little bigger at receiver. They were trying to get Austin Hooper as well. I don't want a team to just overspend, but the plan backfired on them, and I can say that, with certainty. The plan backfired for them, and they most certainly did not get better losing Bulaga. I know the fans didn't like Blake Martinez. Kirksey for Martinez is pretty much a swap. I can't tell you which one's better. Kirksey's better from what I saw 2 years ago when he's on the field. How is he 2 years later? If he's on the field, is he better? You can argue that. The Packers did not get better here. I expected more. I gave them a D, but the more I'm talking about it, I'm disliking it more and more. There's still some free agents out there, so they can definitely do it. A team like the Bears, definitely what they did in free agency, kind of catching up to them, and I just expected more. And it really looks like a good example of a plan backfiring on a team. So not thrilled with the Packers at all this offseason. And speaking of that, the Texans are next, and it's hard for me to give a team an F, but right off the bat, let's throw the F up there for the Texans for multiple reasons, for several reasons. Unlike the Packers, we just talked about, they somewhat thin on cap space. They had some cap space. There's teams that were thinner on cap space that happened to, their plans worked. They happened to make moves, but that is somewhat of an excuse there. The Texans had the cap space. They're right there as a playoff contending team trying to take that next step. So let's go get better. It's time to get better. This is our time. And they don't do that. They go backwards. They have a long list of signings, though. If you have a long list of signings with that cap space, you automatically assume this team got better. No, they did not. They traded for DeAndre Hopkins, way under their value, so that makes them worse. And on top of that, you expect them to go get better players in other positions. They re-signed some players that, I don't mind Roby. They spent a little bit much. Vernon Hargreaves to me is, I didn't expect him back, but basically it's a bunch of mediocre signings is the best way to explain it. Maybe they get a little better with David Johnson at running back with that trade. But Eric Murray, they kind of made that a priority. Just a lot of, Phillip Gaines, just a lot, focusing on AJ McCarron. Randall Cobb, I thought got paid a little bit. Like, go get better at receiver. You already got a ton worse. It's just confusing. And they're leaving those holes that they have, I assume they think they filled the running back hole. They created even more. It was already a need at receiver. It was already a need because when Will Fuller's out, it's a disaster almost. And then when he's in, it looks good. But you needed another receiver in there. Now you minus Hopkins away from that. They need multiple receivers. They need multiple very good receivers. There's an obsession with just getting mediocre corners. They have a long list of corners. They can still get better at the position. They definitely, where I thought they were going to fill a need is a great pass rush free agency class, especially for a 3-4 defense. They did not focus on that whatsoever. It's just very confusing, and they definitely got worse. They definitely got worse at the same time of having cap space, at the same time of making a bunch of signings, and they got worse. It's just very bad. It's just very bad look for Bill O'Brien and the Texans over there. So that's the first F of the day. The Colts are next. And the Colts are a tough one to grade. You look back to last year, they had all this cap space. They didn't do much, and I was okay with that. Don't overspend in spots where they had needs. They were looking at guys like Tyrell Williams, Landon Collins. That would have been overspending. It was a good move to pass on that. People were freaking out, though. People were really freaking out. Why aren't they spending money? This is ridiculous, and I was okay with it. This year's kind of where they're going to fill all those needs, and they had that top dollar, in cap space, and they didn't really do that, that they really just gained two players if you want to throw. They gained Rhodes, they gained TJ Carey now. But really the two impact players, Phillip Rivers and DeForest Buckner. So you expected a little more. They still have some holes without a first round pick. But so that kind of brings the grade down, but they definitely did get better. Phillip Rivers over Jacoby Brissett. How much better did they get there? You can't sit here and say it's significant, but they definitely got better. And then DeForest Buckner, they trade and pay a lot for him, but they definitely get better. And that's kind of a type of player they've been missing. They've been really trying to find in DeForest Buckner. So kind of back and forth on that one. I'm back and forth on the Rivers one alone because, I like the fit there. He's got the offensive line, doesn't have the weapons. Hopefully they get those weapons in that second round. But I never really like when a team signs a guy to a 1 year big money because you're spending the big money, but we're going to get this guy because we only believe in him for 1 year. It's not the greatest feeling, It kind of leaves you with a little, bit of a bad taste in your mouth. It's one of those. But at the end of the day, they did get better. There's good things I can say about this offseason. There's bad things I can say. So that kind of splits it up into the B. But the good thing is they got better. You shouldn't say definitely because they added, two spots. What if Rivers continues to struggle, have more turnovers than the Colts did last year? Buckner, they definitely got better with. But by how much with two players? Maybe Rhodes makes them slightly better. He really struggled last year. It's going to be interesting to watch Rhodes, too, because he was an elite corner in 2017. 2018, he was on and off the field like crazy injuries. And last year, it looked like those injuries really affected him. From 2018 to 2019, he looked a lot slower, like a lot slower. That guy used to be a 4.4 guy. He looked like he's running the fives. Seriously, I'm not even being funny. So that's kind of the good thing or the bad thing, because that could continue, and that's bad. He shouldn't be on the field. Or maybe more time to rest, new team, new medical staff. Maybe he's getting back to where he was. It's a possibility. I think it's a low chance, but it's a possibility. So that one could end up being sneaky. Moving on, the Jags here. Jag kind of confusing. They trade guys for under their value, mainly talking about Calais Campbell. So that kind of knocks them down a bit. Joe Schobert I like the Joe Schobert sign. I think it's a great fit. They're going to be able to do different things, give different looks because of that. I like that one. So that kind of brings it up. Rashaan Melvin's a tiny impact. It's going to have not much of an impact on the grade, but I kind of like that one. Other than that, though, it's kind of confusing on their route. Still waiting to see what they do on Ngakoue. It seems like they're just going to hang on to him, even though he probably won't play for them. So that's a little confusing, but I guess we'll make a judgment on that when the time is right. But everything's kind of pointing in the direction of rebuild. But then they have, I can't really tell. You can't really tell with the Jags. And then Eifert, I think, is good if healthy. That's a big if. So there's positives and negatives in that. So I'm going to do a 2-year, $15.5 million when you kind of hinted you're at rebuild mode. But this is kind of a win right now mode. So that one I'm less and less fond of, when that one's sitting with me here. But, it's just what mode are they in? What's their angle here? Like, it's a little confusing. Not the most exciting free agency and confusing moves. So for the Jags, I gave them a C. I gave them a C for this offseason here. Moving on to the next team, we got the Kansas City Chiefs. And this is where this is where you learn my system of grading, I guess. Because you look at what the Chiefs did, they did absolutely nothing real. Well, not absolutely nothing. They did bring back DeMarcus Robinson. They franchised Chris Jones. Other than that, couple very small things. So they did absolutely nothing. So, but this kind of shows my system here of grading. This team had no cap space. You expected them to do nothing. Maybe you didn't even expect them to get DeMarcus Robinson back. They franchised Chris Jones. We'll see what they do with that. But they did what they had to do. They did what they had to do in the situation they were at. That puts them, to me, that's the did what you had to do grade right there. I gave them a B. So it's a solid offseason. I mean, you didn't really expect much else. We'll see what they do in the draft. That's really all I have to say for that one. Some people may disagree. That's how, they shouldn't, though. That's really makes sense to me that the Chiefs did what they could and had to do. The Raiders are next. Another one of those. I feel like there's a lot of teams I'm kind of back and forth on, with their moves here. Right off the bat, ones that I really, really like. Corey Littleton, I think, is an A-plus deal. It's a on-the-rise linebacker, can do it all. It makes him a lot better. It's an A-plus deal. A little tiny bit cheaper than I thought he would go for. I like getting Marcus Mariota. That's an A deal to me. I like that. Still some upside there. I like that. But after that, it's kind of a long list of signings, and most of them are kind of mediocre or confusing to me. Don't have a problem with the Aguilar one. Not one you're going to jump out of your seat about. Eli Apple's a little confusing. He's young. They needed a corner. To me, I use this term a lot, but it's one of those situations where the cornerback position was go big or go home. You have a long list of young corners that have more potential than Apple that you can continue to play. You didn't really need another one of those types of talents. It was kind of go big or go home. So Apple one was kind of confusing. Malik Collins, I like that. It's a 1-year, $6 million deal, though. Jeff Heath, you pay $8 million for a backup safety. Confused about that one. Wachowski, a little risky because he's only had one solid year coming in as a backup to starting because somebody got hurt. A little risky, but overall I kind of like that one. Carl Nassib, paying him $17 million fully guaranteed to be, a backup defensive end. That's not going to make much of an impact. It was very confusing. And then Jason Witten was kind of one that felt like for show. Let's just bring Witten in here for a 1-year, $4 million deal. So for the most part, for most of these, I didn't really like them, as you can tell. But the impact signings are the ones I liked. Corey Littleton's an impact signing. Marcus Mariota and Nick Wachowski, those are bigger signings that I kind of like there. Some of them that I love, like Littleton. So that kind of brings it up, kind of kept them in the middle there at a B. So back and forth on their plan there, I thought. But that's what I got for the Raiders. Moving on to the LA Chargers. What they did was fantastic, I thought. They had Brian Bulaga, and they needed a right tackle. He does have some slight injury concern. But they really needed a right tackle, I should say, because they needed a left in the draft. You didn't want to need both. Pretty good deal. I thought, for sure the Packers would maybe pay a little more than that even, or another team. Eckler deal was a steal. Chris Harris deal was a steal. Gets them better. Hunter Henry, they franchise tag. Linval Joseph, he has a little bit of an injury concern, at this point of his career. I think it's a perfect fit. At nose tackle next to Jerry Tillery, their draft pick last year. Then trading for Trey Turner was an absolute win too. I would give them an A+, but I'm going to give them an A. They still can make the moves. Maybe Cam Newton, kind of smells like a Cam Newton deal could happen. At the time of recording this video, they did not fill at quarterback position, the most important position in football, and then left tackle, which they can go to the draft with. But left tackle, quarterback. Those are two needs you fill with your first-round pick. They have one at 60 overall. I stressed it plenty of times. As a team that can win now, especially with these signings, you need a veteran quarterback in there. You don't want a rookie quarterback in there. So it's kind of two to be determined here. They didn't take, kind of like the Bills a little bit. I love what they did. They got better in the offseason, but I had a specific plan for them before that they needed to do. They filled almost all of it. They kind of left out the edge rusher. The Chargers kind of left out the quarterback as of now. If they get Cam Newton, I guess the contract matters. If they get Cam Newton, I'm probably bumping this one up to an A+. So I like what the Chargers did, as you can tell here. Still some unfinished business, though. The Rams are next. Did not like what the Rams did. We saw the Texans got the first F of the video, and the Rams will get the second F of the video. The Rams front office, once we thought was good, it's a complete shit show right now. The last couple years, the last couple years kind of set them up for this situation. I'm not going to grade the last couple years, but just to know they've made a big-time mess. But going into this free agency, they don't have a ton of cap. They won't be able to sign Littleton. They won't be able to sign Dante Fowler. Those are two tough losses, but that may be how it is. So I'm not going to sit here and punish a team because they weren't able to sign their own guys. Maybe they take a little bit off because they weren't able to get either one back. You take a little bit off on looking at a grade or evaluating the team's free agency. So that's really not it. What is it is, and not even, people get confused. I talked about this before. They get confused about it. Cutting Todd Gurley, to me, is not a bad move. It's not a good move. It's not a bad move. Cutting Todd Gurley to do what? That's where I'm getting to with this. You cut Todd Gurley. You just absolutely had to cut him before that deadline to pay him money because you need to do other things. Where did that money go? It went to overpaying Michael Brockers, who's only proven to stop the run. He can't get pressure playing, especially playing next to Aaron Donald. You're going to pay him $31.5 million. You couldn't pay that for Corey Littleton, though. You cut Todd Gurley to do that. You cut Todd Gurley to, it's not to do all these things, but it plays a part. To overspend on Leonard Floyd, a guy that's proven he can't get to the quarterback, and it's okay to give the guy a trial, 1-year deal. Yeah, worth $6 million maybe maximum. It could go up to $13.5 million. How Leonard Floyd got more money than a guy like Vic Beasley, who almost in the same situation, but Vic Beasley's proven way more and knows he needs a 3-4 team. It's absolutely ridiculous. Cutting Todd Gurley to save that extra money to sign Ashawn Robinson, who's been somewhat of a bust, hasn't really done much of anything, to a 2-year, $17 million, a way overspent, giving Andrew Whitworth, who's borderline retirement, 3-year deal. Just absolutely mind-blowing moves here. Okay, you needed Whitworth back. 3-year deal, I don't like. We're going to give them a pass on that one because they need him back. Brockers is one of their own. They still overspent on that one. I can't even give that one a pass. But really, the Leonard Floyd, Ashawn Robinson, bad deals. Every team has bad deals. Most teams have bad deals. But you kind of saved that little extra money and got rid of your running back to do this. Ridiculous. So I'm giving the Rams an F. Definitely what they deserve. We're moving on. When teams do stupid things, it gets me all amped up. I'm not a Rams fan, and I still get pissed like I'm a Rams fan. The Dolphins are next. And for the Dolphins, a lot of moves here. And some of them I like. I think most of them I like, actually. Starting with Kyle Van Noy, I love that one. Perfect fit in Flores's defense, really, that kind of the utility linebacker. It can help them in multiple. It's an A+ deal. I liked it. Cheaper than I thought it would be, too. I like Jordan Howard. Nothing super major. I like it. Ted Karras, nothing super major. I like it. Shaq Lawson's one that's grown on me, actually. I always said he was a 3-4 defensive end. That's where I graded him at. Out of Clemson, and kind of known as a bust early on, playing in a 4-3 end. Finally had a pretty good year last year, but I still view as a 3-4 end. I think that's what he'll play for the Dolphins. We've seen them kind of go towards the 3-4 last year, and they're getting Kyle Van Noy. A lot of this points towards that direction. So that one's kind of growing on me for Shaq Lawson. Byron Jones, I like this deal. It's a lot of money. But if there's a corner that was worthy of being the highest paid in free agency, because remember, free agency is not about now either. It's about long-term as well. And Byron Jones, he's proven and he still has potential. Very rare for a player in general, let alone a cornerback. I don't value the position super high because, you're kind of stuck on one side of the field. You're not making much of an impact of interior pressure, edge pressure, linebacker pressure, and coverage, But, one that I would value high is Byron Jones because corners, why I devalue them is it's hard to get to a proven spot and still have potential. I think Byron Jones is at that spot. So all these are pretty good deals. I absolutely hate the Eric Flowers deal. He still has a lot more to prove at the guard position. Just too much money. So that one, I guess maybe that one's keeping it from being an A+, but I do like him at an A. They got better. Love some of these signings, as you can tell. I mean, the Kyle Van Noy one's one of my favorite of the offseason. So good job of the Dolphins there, and they got a lot to add in the draft still, and they can do that. The Vikings are next. Interesting team because they let a lot of guys walk, but, a lot of that I expected. There's some people I think overreacting to the guys that let walk. Rhodes was expected. Trey Waynes, best case they could have got him back, but it's not this major loss. They weren't going to spend what was spent. Everson Griffin, it was kind of 50-50 on that. I knew they weren't going to pick up his option. Starting to decline, but still pretty solid. Linval Joseph, I expected them to cut him. So nothing surprising. People act like they lost their Daniil Hunters, their Eric Kendricks, their Anthony Barrs, their Harrison Smiths. They didn't lose those guys. Those guys are still there. It's tough to see that many faces go, though. That's kind of tough. But that's not the end of the world. For those, it's not great, but it's not the end of the world. They did bring guys back, like C.J. Ham, I think is one of the better fullbacks in football. They brought him back. The Vikings have had a messy situation at kicker, finding a kicker. Dan Bailey had a great year. They brought him back, so they don't have to go searching for another kicker again and cause a mess like they've had in the past. The Michael Pierce signing's growing on me. What they did with Linval Joseph around that age, he was a guy that was going to stop the run. Let's develop him in kind of an interior pass rusher. That's a bonus, and they kind of did that. He was a top-tier nose tackle for them. Now he's aging. They're going to bring in that new one. Michael Pierce, absolutely proven in the run game. Let's see if they can develop him to get after the quarterback. So I like that one. Tajay Sharp is nothing major, but it was a steal of a deal. Kind of back and forth on those. I'm kind of back and forth in the grade. Losing that many players, even though it's not as serious as people make it sound, that definitely knocks them down. Something that I do like is the Kirk Cousins contract. I actually really like it after looking into it more because he was already under contract this year. You end up saving $10 million this year. I'm trying to figure out where that $10 million went. You look at the contract. It's a 3-year extension, so they have him for 2020, 2021, 22. But if you look at it, they save a ton of money. I think it's around it's in the range of $35 to $45 million if they cut Kirk Cousins after 2 years. Do I expect them to cut him them? No. But if he improved from last year to this year, you could make the case he can keep doing that or stay around the same. They'll have a decision to make after 2 years if they want to cut him and save all that money. So they save this year, and I'm not really sure where that $10 million that they save went, honestly. That kind of brings up that cap space is a myth that everyone talks about. Some teams just find ways to move the money around. So I actually really like the Kirk Cousins deal. But why? I'm still giving them a C because you did lose a lot of players. Again, it's not as bad as some people are making it. But this is kind of wise to see, they found ways to clear more money, and that was to do what? At least they didn't go overspend on anybody like the Rams. And maybe it's still early. They definitely can still make the move. So it's kind of to be determined. But yeah, definitely not an offseason. And they traded Diggs away too. So the team, you could say, probably got worse at this given moment. So that's why it's down in that C range there. I think the Cousins deal actually kind of keeps it up though. That's actually, everyone loves to rip Cousins, and they can continue to do that. But that contract is actually, I'm confused on how that's possible. But then into the Patriots, another team kind of like the Vikings. They lost a long list of free agents, but this one a little more impactful free agents, I'd say. Maybe Tom Brady just didn't want to come back, so maybe you can't control that. But at the same time, I almost would have let Devin McCourty walk. Still a great key piece to them, but like the direction they're heading and losing the veterans that they lost. Kyle Van Noy so important, Tom Brady's so important. Then spending 2 year, $23 million on McCourty, no hometown discount there. A little confusing. So the Patriots got a lot worse. Letting Danny Shelton walk for Bo Allen too. They replaced the same exact money to me. They were getting Danny Shelton playing pretty well, and he still has more upside. So that was a little confusing too. So Patriots, not the best offseason. Some things you can't put too much blame on them for it, but I'm still giving it a D because, the impact of the losses and kind of what they did with their money there, that they had remaining, and they have no cap space right now on top of it. So that's not the best situation. So it's weird to see for the Patriots. The Saints are next, and for the Saints, how much better than they get? That's the first thing I look at here. They bring back Drew Brees, so that's about the same. Taysom Hill, though tender, that was a pretty good move. They brought Andrews Pete back. They replaced Von Bell. They replaced Von Bell with Malcolm Jenkins. So they're pretty much the same team at that point. They do add Emmanuel Sanders, what makes them better. It does have slight injury concern, but they needed that type of receiver to put in there, so that makes them a little better. For the most part, it almost feels like the same Saints team. So it's not something you get super, super excited about. But again, what I factor in here, my system and grading, you look at their cap space situation. They weren't supposed to really do anything. They were supposed to actually lose some of their players and then not get better. They get better with Sanders. They make tremendous pay cuts, kind of bringing up the cap is a myth thing again. All these players are taking pay cuts. Where's the money going? Adding Malcolm Jenkins actually can make them better, a little bit better right now. What they did with the Janoris Jenkins contract was genius. So given what their cap space situation was and what they're able to do, it's fantastic. So I'm giving the Saints an A for sure here on this offseason so far. And I expect them to be pretty much done, maybe some tiny moves here and there. The Giants are next. Long list of signings, but nothing at all major in terms of a major impact there. Don't like what the Giants did, honestly. Just there's some sneaky signings in there. Really not even. I think Kyler Fackrell could be a sneaky signing. Could be kind of the next Marcus Golden, what they did with him. Just a solid pass rusher for them with not going to be a huge impact, though. Blake Martinez is, maybe they at the end of the day, maybe they get a little better with Blake Martinez, a 3-year, $30 million. But they were really high on Corey Littleton. They were high on all these big time free agents. But they couldn't spend that extra couple million for a guy like Corey Littleton, Blake Martinez. Huge difference there. So that was a little confusing. But they were in on all these big free agents, and Clowney's still available. Maybe they can make something happen there. And they didn't really do that here. At the same time, the whole Leonard Williams situation's a mess. He's overpaid with the franchise tag. Not a whole bunch you can do there. It's kind of going back to that trade was confusing and a bad one. And then James Bradbury, to me, they get slightly better at the cornerback position. Still, Bradbury's a young corner with some upside, but still isn't 100% proven to me. Kind of look like a slightly below average corner up until the early of this 2019 season. He was playing pretty damn good the first 5 or 6 games, but then kind of went back downhill. I know the Panthers had a little bit of a messy situation. Ron Rivera got fired within there. But you already have these corners that, maybe are slightly below that you traded up for in the draft. DeAndre Baker, you used a supplement pick on Beal, and that was just very recent for those. I mean, you got Julian Love, who played a little bit of safety and slot corner. So it just almost feels like you're kind of giving up on your young, cheaper guys that you had to have to go get a young, unproven, expensive guy. So that one was confusing to me. He's definitely better than a DeAndre Baker, but not by to me, looking at potential and what you gave up for those players, not by a whole bunch to me. So to me, that was a position go big or go home, and they went big with the money. I don't know if they went big with the player. So for them, I just don't really like what they did while having the cap space, while supposed to be doing these big moves. I'm going to give them a D. It's not absolutely terrible, but I'm going to give them a D for the Giants there for their offseason, but moves still can be made. The Jets are next, and looking at what the Jets did, what they started off with, I wasn't liking it. Adding George Fant, an unproven tackle, for maybe a little bit more, not super amount of money, but a little more than expected. What are they going to do with him? Kind of what's the plan? Alex Lewis they bring back, not the sexiest moves there, a little confusing too. But then they start to pick it up a little bit. Looking at Brashard Perriman, actually, some upside, little 1-year deal, so I guess not that much risk. The first glance, why don't you spend a little bit more to get your own Robbie Anderson back? But there is some good for it because you did save a little bit of money this year, and obviously you save it next year too because Robbie Anderson got a 2-year deal, Perriman got a 1. And you're entering this crazy good draft class, so you save money and you're actually going to get better depending on what they take there. Then adding Connor McGovern for center was big time. Adding Greg Van Roten from the Panthers. I thought that was pretty big. Patrick Owosso is one of my favorite sneaky signings. They're going to he's going to be kind of a utility linebacker for them. I like that. Adding Pierre Desir is nothing crazy, but it's solid. Jordan Jenkins they got back, somewhat cheap. So I'm starting. They started off a little on the downside, but I'm starting to like a lot what the Jets have done. It's something to jump out of your seat about and get excited, but they've done the right things. And I kind of like some of the pieces they added recently, so I gave them a B+ here. And then we're moving on to the Eagles. Feel like I've been talking forever, and that's because I have been. The Eagles, what they've done, I like the Javon Hargrave signing. Yeah, it's a bit pricey for a nose tackle. That's had probably one solid year, but to me, I'd still call him about proven. But I like it a lot because the fit, and they're going to be able to give different looks with their current D-line. They got guys along their D-line that can move around a bit, so they can give some different looks. That could be pretty interesting. Because in the interior, Fletcher Cox obviously can move around, play multiple D-tackle positions. Malik Jackson can be your 3 technique. You almost can be like a 3-4 end if you want to give the different looks, and Hargrave can be your nose tackle. So multiple different looks there. That's pretty exciting. Letting Jenkins go, kind of surprising. So their safeties would be McLeod, Parks. We've seen Mills play a bit of corner and safety. Roby Coleman they got pretty cheap, nothing major impactful. But they got pretty cheaper than I thought. Finally adding, I thought was a must for them to go get a proven corner. Enough messing around with these average young corners. They go get the proven corner, Darius Slay, a little cheaper, maybe a little cheaper than I expected to get traded for. So a good deal there. I would not have made him maybe the highest paid corner. Something that I don't hate, but I don't love. But they did what they needed to do there. They still have some pretty big needs, but I guess that's what the draft's for. So overall, I like what they did. I'm going to give them an A- on the Eagles offseason there so far. The Steelers are next, and the Steelers, kind of like what I talked about the Chiefs here. They were in cap space hell for the most part. They're going to have to make some. They're going to make some cuts that weren't going to help them a whole bunch in terms of clearing cap. They were pretty much going to stay the same at the same time of getting Big Ben back. So I guess that by default that makes them better. That's kind of where my mindset was, and they pretty much did that. Except they get Wisniewski, which is a realistic signing, a pretty good one for a team with not a lot of cap. Then trade for Chris Wormley, kind of realistic there, the right move. But then they add Eric Ebron, which I didn't think was going to be a possibility. Yeah, he's had his down years. I think he's a pretty good fit with Steelers. I think he makes them better, not by a whole bunch, but I think he makes them better. So they did what they needed to do, and then maybe a little bit of some in a bad situation with the cap situation. So to me, that's a B+. It's kind of they did what they had to do, did the right things, and then maybe a little bit of some. That's where that plus next to that B comes in. So I thought that made sense for them. Then moving on to the Niners, same exact situation for the Niners. They don't have a ton of cap. They do have some big-time players they got to get back. So they got to do what they got to do here. But they had a tough decision because they weren't going to be able to pay because DeForest Buckner wants an extension. They're not going to be able to pay Armstead and Buckner. To me, the way I look at it was Buckner or Armstead and Jimmy Ward. That's kind of how I look at it. If you kept Buckner, you weren't going to be able to bring back Armstead and Jimmy Ward, kind of looking at the contracts, the prices. So not only do I like getting the 2 better than the 1, I talked about before, Armstead. Armstead is much more of the important piece than Buckner, actually. You could say Buckner's a better player at his position, but Armstead's more of the important piece in that defense. A guy that can play D-end and slide in a bit because they have D Ford as a pass rusher off the ball a little bit on the one side, and then they have Nick Bosa on the ball on the other. So Armstead is that. It's harder to replace Armstead, and he had that career year for a reason. He fits this defense, and I think it's a pretty good deal. If I'm another team, I'd pay him more than that. So, making the right decision, doing what you have to do first with a limited cap space, then making the right decision, making the better decision, and on top of all that, they gain the 13th overall pick. So kind of like those deals that the teams, the grades I gave out for those teams that did the right thing, kind of was at a B. And then if they added a little bit of a bonus, which making the right moves, getting Armstead cheaper, getting back Jimmy Ward, which unexpected, that bumps it up to a B plus. And then gaining the 13th overall pick out of this, that's going to bump it up even further. I gave the Niners an A minus for their offseason. So not a whole bunch of moves, but a good offseason here for what they had what their situation was. And then we got the Seattle Seahawks, which I'm still expecting another move. That's one of these teams that is tough to grade right now. We can revisit, but a team that I definitely thought would be a top tier contender, looking at what they for their free agency, what they had, cap space, and what they're going to be able to add, or bring back their own players. And they didn't do that really. They didn't do that yet. I like the Dunbar. I like to add that. I like the Dunbar trade. Some smaller signings. Dorsett it's solid. BJ Finney solid. They have like they like to do. They add kind of the average to below average offensive lineman they did here. I didn't like paying Greg Olsen $7 million for 1 year. Not the worst thing in the world. I didn't really like it. But yeah, overall, I expect them to do more, to get better. I can't really say they got better here, especially with no Clowney, which they could bring back. They may have got worse, though. Quentin Jefferson was a key piece of that defense. He played multiple roles on that defense, on that defensive line, and he went for cheap somewhere else. It's not like they didn't have the money. I do like bringing Jaron Reed back. But overall, I expected more. I expected better. It's a little confusing on the lack of moves or the moves they did not make where they could have, kind of like the Quentin Jefferson. So for now, I still expect another big move to come, which can significantly change this. But for now, I'm giving them a C minus here for the Seahawks. A little disappointing. But Russell Wilson and some of that talent, they definitely will be a contender still. But they could get better. This is the win. That's another thing. That's another thing about that C minus. This is a win now. It should be a win right now. Let's make this team as good as it possibly can get. And there's some teams that want to do that but can't because of their cap space situation. Seahawks are not one of those teams. So that kind of gets to me a little bit too. So we'll see. There's still some free agency left here. But we're getting there to draft season. It is draft season. So C minus for the Seahawks right now. And then the Buccaneers, only a couple more teams left here. The Buccaneers. So what I determine with the Buccaneers is the way I look at it. Four names here. Four names I want to mention. Shaq Barrett, Jason Pierre-Paul, Ndamukong Suh, and Jameis Winston. Those four players, it was very, 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 very unlikely they were going to get all four of those. Even though they have the cap space, it's very unlikely they were going to get all four of those players back in general. Also, you would like to get your players back and get better. And that would actually be correct. They did not get all four of those players back. They didn't get Jameis Winston. They got Shaq Barrett, Jason Pierre-Paul, their key pass rushers that were playing very well in that new system last year. They got Ndamukong Suh back, who was part of that top-tier run defense. And not getting Jameis Winston back, they got Tom Brady. They got Tom Brady back. So they didn't get those four guys back. It was unlikely. It was going to be a little bit sad. No, they didn't do that. They got actually a lot better with that. Then adding pieces like Joe Haig, nothing major, but that's pretty solid as well. This team got better. And I think they get better by default with Shaq Barrett and Pierre-Paul, actually, their own, because Pierre-Paul missed some of last season, and he was really getting into that new system. He looked pretty damn good. Shaq Barrett fits that system. He's a pass rusher on the rise. And how they franchised him and got Jason Pierre-Paul back for a lot cheaper than I thought he would be is another bonus. So this is an A+ all day for the Buccaneers. That makes them right now the winners of free agency with the first A+ off the board here. So very excited what the Bucs did. And it's not like they needed to, the only thing they need to fill here is running back, which I prefer. A couple actually they need to fill, but running back, which I prefer in the draft anyways, like I've always said, like a lot of people think. And then offensive line, which they can fill that with that first round pick. The secondary is going to get better by default. Why? Because they have a bunch of young talent that are getting better by day, and they're set pretty much everywhere else on the defense. So love what the Buccaneers have done. And moving on to the Tennessee Titans. And then for the Titans, I think the fans are still waiting on this another big move because they traded Jarrell Casey, which that was kind of the bad move for them. I thought less than his value. So everyone's kind of waiting on that next big move. But I did think franchising Henry and signing Tannehill was the right decision. Some people don't like it. It was the right decision. I've talked about it a bunch before, and mainly because, I'm not a huge believer in extending running backs for a lot of money, but it's a tough situation because I am a huge Derrick Henry fan. He's a key piece to this offense, and it's not like he's going to start to wear down like running backs usually did because they kind of limited him early in his career there. So I think he's just getting going. I'm not saying he's going to get better than last year, but he's not going to go downward or get hurt or anything. But still, it's tough to pay running backs all that money and extend them. So I think it was the right decision. The Vic Beasley is a sneaky good signing. I think he fits tremendously in the 3-4 defense, that's where I graded him coming out of Clemson. Didn't really get to play that yet. Choosing Dennis Kelly over Jack Conklin, it's not the greatest thing in the world because Conklin was played more because he was better, but only by slightly. But it was the right decision because of the money, and they could look to get better for the future with that. Then Ty Sombralo is a pretty good depth sign that actually could start for them at guard potentially. So they did things right. A couple things right, and then adding Vic Beasley I liked. I still expect another big move here, like everyone's expecting. I'm giving them a B+ for now. I think they did. This team, I think, is another team that Ryan Tannehill could continue to get better. Even if you don't like Vic Beasley, one of those people, and I would suggest that you like this move because I think he fits this defense that much more. I think you need to change the scenery too. But even if you don't like Vic Beasley, he still makes the Titans pass rush better. Believe it or not, he still does. So B+ for the Titans here so far. Expect another big move. And then Redskins are this last team. I don't like how the Trent Williams decision or situation's going. It's still, I guess, to be determined. And I always say, with trades, I don't like teams that panic right away and trade a player right away. Kind of field your options. You never know when options come up. It does not apply to Trent Williams here because of leverage, the value is going down, and he's kind of making it going down every single day. So the Redskins may have shot themselves in the foot not trading him earlier. We will see, but that's not a good situation, so that kind of knocks it down a bit because that situation's really never going to be good for them. But other than that, quite a few deals, nothing major. But what I do like is not overspending on Eric Flowers, and what I do love is not overspending in the secondary because you're going to have a really good front seven. And that defense is going to win because of the front seven. There's really no need to overspend in the secondary. You have a lot of money on Landon Collins already. There's really no need for it. This team, like I said, the defense can get them far, actually. Depending on what they do in the draft, too. The defense could get them far. They're not going to win a Super Bowl, though. We all know that. They're not going to win a Super Bowl, but really, they could be a real good team because that nasty defense there. And that's a maybe. But they're not going to win now, so saving money for the future and just saving money for just being smart, too. Like, you don't need to just overspend on Eric Flowers. You don't need to overspend in the secondary. It's a smart offseason. It's nothing major here. It's just the right thing they needed to do. And then Kendall Fuller, that one's actually really growing on me, the Kendall Fuller one, because to me, he'll play corner. He has the ability to play free safety, though, too, and him next to Landon Collins would be pretty good, but I think he'll play corner. But he had a tough task with the Chiefs. The Chiefs, why their corners look bad, they're better than you think. They're not anything fantastic, but it's because they play more man than everybody and press man in the cornerback position. Maybe specifically, if we're looking at specific jobs in the NFL, you could argue that is the hardest thing in the NFL, one of the hardest positions to play. And then so him coming over from that to the Ron Rivera, more of the zone defense, it's going to be a lot easier for him. So he may look better here. So that was a pretty key addition. So they kind of did what they needed to do. They were kind of smart. And again, I like some of the signings like Fuller. Thomas Davis is cheap. Adding the solid, cheaper options in DB, Darby, Davis, and then Kevin Pierre-Louis, a sneaky good signing, nothing major. Trading for Kyle Allen. So those things kind of bump it up quite a bit. Doing it right in free agency, the Trent Williams thing, can't make it go down in a major way because it hasn't really happened yet, but they definitely shot themselves in the foot. Overall, I gave them a B+. I think they did things right. I really like, again, I said it, I really liked it. How they handled the money in certain spots, but they still filled the needs in those spots in the defense where they can focus on after they take Chase Young. Maybe something surprising happens that's starting to heat up in smoke season. But that kind of gives them the ability for the rest of the draft to go offense and kind of focus on that for the future. So it all makes sense to me. I feel like I'm losing my voice. I was talking too long for this one, so I'm wrapping it up. That's going to do it. Subscribe to both of our channels. Follow us on Twitter. Follow our new podcast. There's a link in the description comments for everything. We're going to be live. We've got some live streams coming up to talk Q&A on draft and just to talk draft in general, and we'll be live during the NFL draft on day one, of course, so join us for that. That's going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.